this song for ya.
You're listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I will do one episode for each song the band recorded in the studio. However, this is a fan podcast and not band endorsed. It's more of a tribute to their long history, well beyond just the hits, and my way of giving something back to a band that has given so much to me. Let's dig in! Hello and welcome to another episode of Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast. I am your host, Scott Haskin, bringing you this bonus season doing individual reviews of all the songs that I had guests on to review because, well, there's a different focus. And I've already, in these few episodes that I've done, found some things that I hadn't heard in the songs before. So I'm finding this really fascinating to take this journey again through these songs, but do it where I'm not, thinking about what I'm going to talk to my guest about, notating things to point out and all that. I could really just focus on the music. The other thing that's a little bit different in this process is that when I'm doing it solo, I have the ability to listen to parts a few times, whereas when I'm with a guest, I don't really have the ability to do that without having to go through a lot more editing. So it really just simplifies the process the way I do it with a guest. So here I have the ability to dig a little bit deeper, and that works really well. And I think that's that's why I'm finding some things that I hadn't heard before. But talking about Lazy, did this with Alan Schatzberg from the RushRash Podcast, also partnered with Chaz Charles. And they do that show together. It's a really cool show on the band Rush, which I still find it fascinating. As I'm recording this, I've been a guest on their show once, and we talked about me coming back on the show for another episode. When this airs, I don't know if that will have happened yet, but I just love that I get invited onto all these shows with bands that I know next to nothing about, which is kind of cool because it gives me an opportunity to learn about bands that I just haven't taken the time to learn about, or maybe kind of wrote off in the beginning. Rush was one of those bands where, like, I love Tom Sawyer, Limelight's a really good song, and then I never cared about anything else they did. Like so many other bands, and I always go back to the example of Zebra, where I absolutely love Who's Behind the Door, absolutely love Tell Me What You Want, and for some reason just never bothered to dip into their catalog until was talking about that on an episode of Uriah Heep podcast, and decided to take the challenge and dig into that album. And I ended up really liking the whole album by Zebra. So it's really interesting, I think, how our taste, and maybe it's timing, maybe it's fear that if we don't like what we hear from the rest of the efforts the band has made, that'll somehow diminish the songs that we hold very dear to us. Maybe it's just like, if I'm going to spend the time listening to something instead of doing something, then I want that guaranteed comfort food, right? Something I know I'm going to like. And if I take a chance outside of that, it may feel like wasted time. I mean, there's so many things it could be. Lazy, for some reason, is one of those songs that I've appreciated from a certain standpoint, but it's just never been a favorite. I don't like, kind of, and I think this goes a little bit beyond straightforward blues, but I'm just not a big fan of blues so much. But, so I a lot of times I'll skip it. I'll just kind of, bypass it because I love Space Truckin' so much. So I'll hurry up and get to that. And it's been a long time since I've heard it. So it was really nice, actually, when Ellen and I sat down and kind of went through the song together. I'm like, you know what? This is actually a pretty good song. But I still don't know if it's one that I would necessarily go to. We just recorded the episode about a week ago. So, this is still May of 2025 as I'm recording this. So I haven't gone back and listened to it since that episode, but I might be less inclined to skip it. But it's still, at the end of the day, it's still, more bluesy type song. And that just isn't really my wheelhouse. So I don't know. Let's see how I feel about it as I go through it again. Let's see if I find anything that I didn't pick up on before. Going to be interesting to see. So here it is, guys. Lazy by Deep Purple. I'm thinking about this a little bit differently. I'm thinking about the transition coming off Smoke on the Water, the previous song on the album. And it's a good rocker, right? Has a long fade out. And then this kind of fades in out of that same emptiness. So that actually works pretty well. I hadn't really thought about that before, but I like that. And the other thing that's interesting is the sound of the organ kind of takes me back to Mark 1 a little bit, because he hasn't introduced the beast yet in this song. We know he will, but he hasn't yet. And so it feels very reminiscent of the early days of Deep Purple. I absolutely love what they did with this here. It goes from that soft organ to the distorted sound, but then we also get that panning effect that is really cool, the way that they pulled that off. And then we go back to the soft organ again really quick. And it's such an interesting change. A great dynamic, a great sound choice. Really dig that. And once again, just a masterclass in technique, the way that we're going from this, kind of bouncy teaser for what we're going to get ahead with the distortion on it. And then he just backs that off again into a slightly distorted, slightly cleaner sound, and just that gentle pulse as we're about to introduce the band. And it's just fantastic writing and playing. This really works well on stage, and got to give a lot of props to John Lord for this. One thing that's interesting to point out on those cymbal crashes is that Ian's actually using one hand to hit them and then one hand to mute them, because you're not hearing that normal ring out or decay that you would in a cymbal. So he's actually just choking it with his hand to take that out. I don't like Richie being so far over in the left ear. That feels a little imbalanced because everyone else comes in so infrequently. If they were, Roger's over in the right ear, John's a little bit to the right. If that were something where they were playing more behind Richie, that would be okay. That would be balanced. But with him all the way over to the left and not much coming into the right ear, it really feels out of balance to me. But I like that little lick from Roger. You just hear him kind of move that note a little bit and give us a little bit of an idea of how heavy the bass is here. Sounds really cool. I like the part. It's a good tease for the song. It's a good kind of, warm up for what we're about to get. But, overall, I'm just kind of like, it's a good song. I can appreciate it, but let's see how I feel about it later. That's a really nice passage. It's very intricate, very technical, and they are playing so well and so tight together. Really sound like a cohesive band here, and I can appreciate that. here's the thing. That is a great amount of solo work. It's a lot of feeling coming out of Richie's fingers. You have to love that. But honestly, like the more I think about it, this solo's really long. And I don't think it needs to be. I mean, this is almost a 7.5 minute song. And if I were a producer, I would probably say we really need to cut that in half. Even if the song stays as long and we break that up into two different solo sections, that might be better. But that is like, and I've noticed this on a couple songs before, like these really long solo sections that, I mean, who am I to question a band that sold, hundreds of millions of albums? But I mean, to me as a producer, that's a very, very long time to be soloing. And the song just really doesn't need to be this long. And maybe in part it's because I don't enjoy it as much as others, but take that as you will. Again, I can really appreciate the precise performance here, the way that they're playing together, the way that that's cohesive, because that's not just like a simple little riff. There's a lot of detail here. So I do like that. I could make the same argument for John Lord's solo about the length, but I will say I really like the way that he kind of switches gears and pumps it up about halfway through. It feels like it's a different part after that. Like we have the entry level stage and then the Rockets on Fire stage. And I think that's pretty cool. Also, Roger's bass, even though he's playing just that walking bass line right now, he's got a couple times he hits those notes pretty hard and they really ring through. And I do like that, that it's not just a boom, 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 boom. That gets a little stale. So I like that he's putting a little flair into that. I think I figured out part of why I don't like this song as much as other songs is because this section kind of, we talk about on the show quite a bit, their regrouping point, and their regrouping point is a little bit long, but it also takes the momentum out of the song. It just, you've got a really grooving solo from Richie. The rhythm section is really moving. And then we stop it to do these starts and stops while Richie's playing and these just supportive, orchestra hit style performance. And I'm like, why do we need to do that? The song is in motion. Why do we keep taking it out of that motion just to put it back in motion again? I think if you do that once in a song or, very gently as they've done over the years with different tracks, I think that's fine. But this is a really long section that takes to build back up into the momentum again. And I think that's a big part of why I'm not that big a fan of the song. It's interesting.
You just stay in bed. You're laying there, just stay in bed. You don't want no money, you don't want no bread. No. If you're drowning, you don't clutch no straw. No, no. If you're drowning, you don't clutch no straw. You don't want to live, don't want to cry no more.
Listening a little more closely to the lyrics, I don't think that's being lazy. I think that's depression. Another thing to add on to my feelings about the song is I'm not a big harmonica fan anyway, although I do like the harmonica solo in this song. I think that's another component that in general I wouldn't be pleased with. Although I will say in this song, it works really well. That's a nice solo for me, and he's got some nice emotion in that. I find in general the harmonica to be played in a way that's either really sad or fairly unemotional. And if an instrument is going to take that solo position and replace vocals, I've always said whatever that instrument is needs to be replacing the emotion that the vocals would have in that section. And in general, I've often felt that the harmonica just does not cover that unless it's that real, like, sad in a old spaghetti Western movie style of playing. In general, not big on harmonica. So it's interesting choice. I do like it here, though. I will say that doesn't ruin the song for me, but in general, in most cases, it would. I really like the variations we're getting from the walking bass line here from Roger. That's great. Ian's vocals are great. Another thing I realized too, I don't like songs typically where they just repeat the same line. For some reason, when John Lord does that in a solo, he has a little lick and he'll play it, a bunch of times in a row. Like, I really like that. That typically sounds good to me, but I don't like really repeated lyrics. You're down and you don't clutch no straws. You're down and you don't clutch no straws. Yeah, I know. You just said that. And I've never been a fan of lyrics that repeat. And I think that's another, and that's very typical in blues music that I'm familiar with, where they'll do that. They'll just repeat lines a couple times. Why I don't like the older Beatles choruses, she loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. It just doesn't do anything for me, especially when you have intelligent lyricists. It seems like a waste of an opportunity to enhance the story, enhance the emotion or the depth of it, maybe. I've never been a fan of that. So that's kind of another strike against the song for me. Okay, so see, we can go through that section without having the stops. And that kind of makes me even less happy that they did it with the stops twice. I think if you do it the first time as you're introducing the song, that's great. That's a good build up to what you're about to bring. Maybe the last time, if you're introducing like the ending or a certain part or something, that's fine. But to do it like twice in the first couple sections of the song, or really three times, because there's the beginning, then there's after Richie solo and after John solo. That's just too much stop and start. They could have kept the flow going of the song. I think I would like it better if they didn't break up the momentum of it that much. Interesting. This to me all of a sudden seems more like a John Lord style solo than it does a Richie solo. He's repeating that section a few times. He's letting those notes kind of hang in the air a little bit more, whereas before he was filling every possible space he could with a note. So yeah, that's interesting. He's really changed the style for the first half of the solo at least. I will say I really do like the build up to the ending here. I think this is really cool. Absolutely love what Roger's been playing, especially in the last minute or so. Jumping that octave really helps, but he's making that walking bass line a lot more enjoyable to listen to. Also, that little part with Ian and Richie where they're like right on with that da, 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 da. Almost sounded like Popeye there. That's really cool. Like I love this part of the solo building up to the end. I think it's very fitting for the song. And here I like that they switch gears a little bit for the end of it. I can't remember if I mentioned this on the show with Alan or not. And again, we were on the Zoom feed, so he can't hear a lot of that panning like I can on my end. But man, like why all of a sudden is Richie back in the left ear again? I don't understand why the balance of sound has changed for the very end of it. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. We don't have a bunch of other instruments coming in where we need to separate the sound and spread things out in the sound field. There's literally no difference. So I really don't understand that choice to put it so far over to the left again. It diminishes the sound of it. It sounds like he's walked across the other side of the room all of a sudden where he was just standing right next to us. That leaves a bad feeling. But overall, I mean, I like the ending of it too. I mean, it's a classic, blues song ending. That's fine. But I guess overall, I don't feel like the sum is better than the parts. I think a lot of the individual parts are great, but put them together, and I'm just still not a big fan of the song. When Deep Purple did their Machine Head rankings, where we go in and we kind of say, what's your order of songs, favorite to least favorite? The biggest challenge I typically have with doing that is how do you pick a least favorite song, because all these songs are great. And Machine Head was the one album it was very easy for me to pick my top, which was, I think, Space Truckin' at the moment. And because, in the moment, one moment it could be Space Truckin', another moment it could be Highway Star. But I think it was Space Truckin'. And then, but my last was an easy pick on this one. It's Lazy for sure. I know a lot of people love this song, and that's fine. It's got a good beat to it. It's really bouncy. It's very lighthearted. It's a real playful song. But it's still just so much blues, and that's just not my thing. That really wears on my ear. It's a more advanced and technical version of what you typically hear with blues, but honestly, it just isn't for me, and that's fine. I know a lot of people love it. A lot of people just go nuts when the band plays the identifying part where the audience knows we're definitely hearing Lazy now. And they go nuts, and that's absolutely fine. I'm just not one of those people, but I don't disparage anybody who does love the song. Tastes are different. If we all love things exactly the same, then it would be a very sad and boring world. So be grateful for that. But anyway, thanks for joining me on this solo review. I'm kind of bummed I didn't find more in it that to like. I think I actually found more in it that I didn't like than I did on the last trip through the song when I did it with Alan. But anyway, it is what it is. Not every song can be, oh my God, this is my favorite song ever. I mean, when you've got a band that has a catalog, there's always going to be a handful of songs that are going to be at the bottom of that list for each individual listener. There's always going to be songs that are, oh my God, I couldn't live without this song if I had to kind of mentality, and then everything in between. At the end of the day, something's got to be last. And this for me is a pretty easy pick to put in like my bottom 5 Deep Purple songs overall. So, but that's just how I feel about it today. Who knows? I may listen to this song in a year and go, you know what? I've really been missing out. Who knows? But I can say consistently all these years, this is, one song that I've been like, yeah, just not for me. So, but as we grow, taste change. So who knows what the future holds? I have absolutely no idea. Interestingly, as I'm recording this, I have not recorded the original Smoke on the Water episode yet with my guest because of scheduling. We're actually getting pretty close to release date. So I actually have to go back then a week later and re-record my individual episode of Smoke on the Water. So I'm actually recording this ahead of that. So it's kind of crazy the way that it works out. It doesn't always go in order, when I'm working with other people, but they post in order, and that's the most important thing. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. Thanks for the likes, the shares. Thank you to my patrons. Really appreciate you guys make the show even more enjoyable to do than it would have been without you. So I appreciate all of you guys in your efforts. You have a great day. Cheers. Thanks for listening to Deep Purple Smoke on the Podcast, a tour of the entire Deep Purple studio recordings. Please remember to give the show a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Leave a comment and tell your friends. I also have a Patreon set up if you'd like to support the show. You can also write to me at smokeonthepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and thanks for listening.